magistrates in the entire country, the magistracy, they are the ones that do bulk of the work.
Any building of more than 2 floors shall be insured.
Let us reaffirm our commitment to the principles enshrined in the ECOWAS Treaty, including the protection of human rights, the promotion of regional integration, and the resolution of disputes through peaceful means.
All right, welcome to the program Scale of Justice on Global Television. I'll be standing in for your regular host, and my name is Anthony Momodu. On today's edition, promises to be very revealing as we look into the judiciary as usual. And as tradition here, we bring the finest minds to help us look at very silent issues. On today's edition, we'll be looking at judicial norms, comparing what is obtainable in Canada versus what's happening in Nigeria, where we have a litany of conflicting verdicts by our judicial, the learned ones, like they call themselves. And so we've got one of the finest minds out of this country in the person of Dr. Ugo Ukpabi, who is the founder of Principal the Republic Law in Canada, joining us on today's edition to help us x-ray the things going wrong in Nigeria's judiciary and the right path to take. Nice to have you join us on the Scale of Justice.
Thank you very much.
And I'm convinced you're going to give us justice on today's program.
I'll do my very best. I've been out of the country for a long time.
Okay.
I left Nigeria in 2001.
Whoa.
And so I've lived abroad for about 20 years.
Yes.
And I'm just visiting briefly. But of course, issues concerning justice, the legal profession, the judiciary are near and dear to me.
All right, so let's begin from Nigeria, our great country. The judiciary seems to have lost its dignity and respect because of consistent litany of conflicting, rulings. What do you think? Where did we start getting it wrong?
It's hard to comment. When I left Nigeria, sort of the judiciary was at the apogee of its sort of respect. We all looked, towards the judiciary as just sort of this symbol of respect. And so I know that in the intervening years, a lot has sort of gone down. We've had decisions that have sort of left us puzzled, those of us who trained here and who went to school here, who did part of our education here. And, we're really concerned with the decisions that are coming, especially when decisions are coming out where, courts of coordinate jurisdiction, in other words, courts that have the same level of jurisdiction, are giving the very different decisions. It's just really puzzling for those of us who sort of trained here, went to school here, and who at least have some familiarity with the legal traditions here when we see that happening. And it's extremely difficult to see exactly how we can determine what is really going on with respect to these conflicting decisions.
All right, let me attempt to help you out. Some say there's a school of thought that believes it has to do with once the judiciary got involved in politics or got partisan and started compromising before their verdict came out, that was where we began to get it wrong. Why has it been easy for the judiciary to be compromised?
Well, the judiciary is part of society. It cannot certainly immunize itself from society. So the idea that the judiciary will not sort of deal with issues that touch on politics, it's a fiction. Because remember, these decisions where the political process is being challenged always end up in court, right? And so I don't think that necessarily should mean that the judiciary should be compromised. in Canada, we have the same thing. Decisions that challenge the sort of the political process end
Okay.
up in courts, and the decisions do not lend themselves to the argument that the judges are being compromised. So it shouldn't be that. If that is what is really happening, that shouldn't be the case. But again, if we subject that school of thought to scrutiny, it will be very difficult to sort of bear out the evidence. I being part of this tradition for many years, I'm very leery of being very critical of the judicial process, in the sense that we need to really dig deep to understand what is the difficulty here, and perhaps to begin to figure out what's the best way to approach it. So, to sit back and just throw accusations and throw level allegations against the judiciary, I think that's sort of an easy way to do it. The more challenging thing to do is to really understand, why do we have these sort of crisscrossing or conflicting decisions, and how do we deal with it? Because it just doesn't look good. Optics wise, it doesn't look good to us. And for those of us who are abroad and who were part of this system, it's puzzling. And at the same time, when we talk to our colleagues, it's very hard to sort of give excuses as to why these decisions are happening. But I don't think that there's an easy answer to this.
All right, let's look at it in terms of the quality of lawyers, judges we have presently. Some have said the era of very distinguished judges, lawyers who put dignity first had gone by. We know the lady with the blindfolded lady was to project the fact that she doesn't take sides and the skill. How come that we don't see it play out in terms of, how would you describe the quality of lawyers produced currently?
There's a lot that is happening. The level of law schools have proliferated. We have a lot of lawyers being produced. The quality issues.
Is it dropping?
It's hard to say. Again, people might easily say that it is dropping. But I live in Calgary, Canada.
Okay.
And I lead the Nigerian Lawyers Association there in Calgary, Canada. And we see Nigerian lawyers coming through. And, Nigerian lawyers are very capable. I moved to Calgary from Toronto in 2007. Between 2007 and now, 2024, the number of Nigerians on my platform are over 200.
Whoa. Whoa.
We have 2 Nigerian judges who've been appointed in the last 2 years, one sitting in Edmonton, one sitting in Calgary. These are Nigerian lawyers who've come through the system, who've come through the Nigerian educational system. They weren't trained
in Canada.
They were trained in Nigeria. So the fundamentals were there. They were very capable. And this year, we had a Nigerian, Banke Adediro, made a King's Counsel, so a silk. The sons are equivalent
to the King's Counsel.
The King's Counsel, although Nigerian sons would want to say that the KC is equivalent to the sons, but we like to correct them that the son is equivalent to the King's.
So what's the difference?
It was always the King's Counsel, but then after Nigeria became a republic, all King's Counsel were indigenized to become senior advocates of Nigeria.
Okay, so just making it look Nigerian.
Nigerianized. In other words, so the King's Counsel predated the Nigerian self.
Okay. You win there.
So I became a King's Counsel in 2022. And, amongst the blacks, amongst visible minorities in Canada, Nigerians are we had a justice minister, the first justice minister in the entire nation of Canada, who was Nigerian, or who is Nigerian, who attended University of Lagos, Kelechi Madu. He's also a King's Counsel. So again, while we'll see some difficulties, while we see some deficiencies, we don't throw away but the baby and the bathwater. We have to be very careful and intentional in trying to figure out where did it go wrong, what things do we put in place to correct those things that went wrong. But the preponderant number of Nigerians who are coming through are very capable, very curious, very willing to learn the system, the right exams, and succeed with very difficult circumstances.
All right, let's also move forward. In Nigeria, we discover that most times, once you have the SANs, equivalent to the King Councils, the cases,
Right.
you're 80 or 70% sure you're winning your case. Is that the tradition in Canada? And what's the criteria to decide who becomes a KC, likewise who becomes a SAN in Nigeria? The criteria, do they vary or they should be of standard?
I think there were two parts to your question.
Yeah.
The first is
Looking at the criteria.
right. Looking
Yes.
at the criteria, with respect to the criteria, there are similarities. You would have had at least 10 years experience, before you can apply. But then, they look at academic proficiency, they look
Okay.
at practice excellence, and they look at your level of contributions. In other words, volunteerism. Volunteerism is a big one.
Could we say that's like more of the pro bono cases you've
Pro
done?
bono cases, that's the big one.
Right,
And
okay.
so some of the work I do with the Nigerian lawyers who are coming through is pro bono. And that's one of the things that sort of makes
Is it
them-
truly pro bono like the word
is-
says?
it is
Because in
pro
Nigeria you hear pro bono, but you're made to pay certain fees
No.
before you.
No. It's pro bono. It's pro bono. You have to mentor them. You have to point them to resources. One of the things that you have to notice is that when they're coming in, year 1 to year 5 is a very dangerous year because they are not well resourced. They could make mistakes, and if they make a mistake, that means that they cannot. They cannot apply for silks for that. Sort of later on in their professional
Professions,
career.
okay.
They can be judges. I used to sit on a committee that appointed judges in the entire province. And one of the first things that we look at is what we call the disciplinary record of the lawyer.
Okay.
If we see that there's a problem with the disciplinary record of the lawyer, that's
Like
it.
for example,
Or if you've been penalized, if you've been suspended, if you've had your practice, if you've not paid your practice
Fees,
or
okay.
if you've
Okay.
sort of taken monies from your trust account, over
says
there,
it cannot be trusted.
that means, well, it cannot be trusted.
Trusted.
And so that sort of can damage you in terms of your professional advancements, right? And so yes, there are some similarities. Pro bono work is real pro bono work. And, spending time with people from your community or from visible minorities, pointing them to direction, asking them to take continuing legal education so that, they know what they do. Because over there, if the file goes bad, unlike in Nigeria where you say it is God's will, no, over there is responsibility. Somebody has to take responsibility for a file going bad. So there are similarities with respect to becoming a King's Counsel and with respect to what happens here. There may be the argument that here it is a little bit more politicized, but I can't speak to that, since I've been out of the country for a while.
All right, as we wrap up, let's look at what are the key things you think makes the lawyer out there in Canada more respected or seem more equipped and more, likely to give a judgment that is unbiased, that is likely to be of a good repute to everybody who at the end of the day sees the ruling? Because in Nigeria most times the rulings is like it's obvious that this is white and this person is guilty, but the lawyers have a way of turning it to turn black.
So pose the question.
So the direct question is, why is it that overseas we see verdict to be sincere and true,
Right.
but in Nigeria it's always the reverse? For instance, the last elections, the presidential tribunal, many Nigerians, even also the political parties, they're talking about the PDP now and Labour Party, they had evidences they did provide.
Right.
And people felt the elections were not credible.
Right.
But when we saw the tribunal, at the end of the day, those judges who were part of that tribunal got promoted to the Supreme Court.
Right.
And it looked more like a reward for,
For bad behavior.
So,
Look, let's be careful. The thing, we tend to undermine ourselves. Quite frankly, we tend to see the glass as half full, and I think in some instances, yes, we do have our challenges. But I tell you, a lot of the challenges we have here, we also have
Over there.
abroad, right?
Okay.
As a visible minority, we have the levels of incarceration of blacks in jails very high. We have some decisions that are very puzzling as well, and that's why we have the appeals. And so, at least in over 15 years experience of practicing abroad, I've seen decisions that were like, this doesn't make sense. And we appealed, and we won. In fact, last month I just won another decision in the Court of Appeal.
that was concerning what?
Well, this appeal had to do with a decision against a lawyer who is
A black lawyer?
a black lawyer who is originally Nigerian, and the judge penalized her without giving her what we call the altering partem. That's the opportunity to be heard.
Okay,
And
like
so-
fair hearing.
Fair hearing. So
Okay.
these are the two key aspects of one of the key aspects of procedural fairness, which is the right to be heard and nemo est judex in causa roi. In other words, you cannot be a judge in your own
Okay.
cause. So I appealed and said, whatever this lawyer did that was wrong, you should have first asked the lawyer for an opportunity to hear her out. You didn't. You penalized her, and then you invited her to give reasons as to what
Why? The
what the
decisions.
quantum of the penalty would be, not as to the substance of what the allegation against her. And so, we won when the Court of Appeal decided, you know what, this is not appropriate. If you want to penalize something, the first thing you should do is to ask, what did this person do? Give the
right.
person the opportunity to be heard. So, it sounds fundamental. It sounds like an elementary thing, but this happens abroad as well. So let's be careful. We do have issues where things arise here and people are genuinely concerned, but that doesn't necessarily mean that we're worse off against vis-a-vis what is happening abroad. I'm called to the bar here, and I'm called to the bar in
Canada, yeah.
I have the benefit of leveraging both sides of the coin, and I can.
So what's your scorecard?
I can be a little careful in trying to,
I notice you've been careful from the start. You've got a mindset for something that's going to happen in the future, so you don't want to be.
It's not easy for me, as a black person who speaks with an accent, to become sort of a king's counsel in
Canada. Okay.
But I always say to myself that the groundwork foundation was laid in Nigeria. I only went abroad to do graduate work. The basic fundamentals were here.
Yeah.
And so I respect the system here. I respect the system of lawyers here. I do quarrel sometimes with some of the decisions of the judiciary.
All right.
But there are still very capable judges who are here, and we should be mindful of that.
All right. On the final note, what will be your, parting shot to the judiciary in Nigeria? Because currently in Kano State, for instance, there's this Kano Emeritus where we
Yes.
also did have, we're still having conflicting results,
Right.
rulings. In Rivers State, same thing playing out where
Right.
the constitutions, the electoral law says if persons, elected through a party jumps ship where there's no obvious, rancor in the party, what it means is they automatically lose their seats. And it was expected that once that was done, it was going to be easy for the Nigerian police force, the judiciary, to spell it out. But now we have the police still backing those 27 lawmakers. We've seen the judiciary not coming out straightforward. And we see a president that made a truce. And you're wondering, these are the areas where the judiciary and the police are supposed to, come out straight in defense of not just Rivers State, but also the Constitution, who has mandated things to go this direction, not the other way.
I think, as a parting shot, integrity is everything. Integrity is everything. If you mishandle it, it's most likely going to come bite you. Many years ago, I arrived Canada in 2001. The idea that I would one day become a King's Counsel, I'm only one of about 5 Nigerians who are King's Counsel in the entire province. It's not one of those things you dream about. It's just beyond your dreams.
Wow.
But when I did put up my paper and they looked at sort of my track record, that application sailed through, right?
Okay.
And so the takeaway from that is, if you decide to stain your hand and to mess up decisions that come before you, it's going to come back to bite you. You never know when. You never know how this might sort of affect you. Going forward to the Supreme Court or whatever. So integrity is critical, and you just never know, because every time you write a decision, you're creating a record. Somebody is going to come back to read those decisions. And of course, scholars will come back to engage with that decision. And if it is a decision that lacked, intellectual rigor and merit and is now robustly argued, then that's going to be a problem. It's going to be documented somewhere that at some point in time, you wrote a decision that was sort of a laughing stock for those in the judicial and in the academic and intellectual community. So integrity is key.
That drives me, we're wrapping up, but that drives me to a very important issue as regards when decisions and rulings are made. They tend to stand as a preference point for future decisions.
Absolutely.
How come we're having that in Nigeria being altered? Is it not supposed to be a norm?
Well,
it
is supposed to be. I mean, we're subject to the concept of stare decisis and judicial precedents. Yeah, but sometimes, and this also happens in America, sometimes, there was a very big decision with respect to, I forget the name of the decision.
But is Donald Trump's recent decision, is it close to something like that?
Which Donald Trump?
He was convicted and waiting for the final the verdict. Looking at that decision, the first time in history, can the jury now? Do you think they will be able to take a decision or a ruling completely opposite from him already being found almost guilty?
Well, to go back to your earlier question, it's possible to set aside a judicial precedent if it was obviously made in error. A new panel can say, yes, we're aware of this decision, but we're not going to be bound by it, right? These people...
Even if it was made by the Supreme Court?
If it was made by the Supreme Court, yes, the Supreme Court can go a different path, right? Yes, if there is nothing showing that it was decided wrongly, the principle is that they are bound by it. But they can take a look, reevaluate it, and decide, yes, that's the position, but we are deciding to go on a different path. Or maybe new circumstances has arisen. Right. So to your question with respect to Trump, I don't think so. Trump is awaiting sentencing, and let's not get ahead of ourselves. We don't know what's going to happen. The worst they can do is to appeal, and we'll see how the Court of Appeal decides with respect to the sentence that is sort of imposed on him.
All right, it's been amazing talking to you. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
We've been talking with one of Nigeria's finest, but I don't know whether to say luckily or unluckily, he's in Canada representing the Green, White, Green with so much dignity. And like he said, he's in the King's Council. Put that to Nigeria, the senior advocate of Nigeria. And he's the founder of the Republic Law firm, and he's doing great things for Nigeria there, and also leading other Nigerian lawyers, making sure that they are doing us truly proud. And from what we've heard, it's obvious Nigeria is doing great. The judiciary is doing great. So let's try to protect what we have, and so that we can take the judiciary further to greater heights. Amazing talking to you.
Thank you.
And thank you for joining us.
Thank you for having me. Thank you.
All right, so that's how we're going to call it a wrap on today's edition of the program Scale of Justice on Global Television. I'm Anthony Momodu, standing in for your regular host, Uyo Gbobufwewe, who is out there making sure that other things are put in place for next edition that promises to be super exciting. Stay with us.
Thank you.
Respect to magistrates. The magistrates in the entire country, the magistracy, they are the ones that do bulk of the work.
Any building of more than 2 floors shall be insured.
Let us reaffirm our commitment to the principles enshrined in the ECOWAS Treaty, including the protection of human rights, the promotion of regional integration, and the resolution of disputes through peaceful means.